Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you guys are at. How you guys doing? So I got a few minutes before if you guys want to rap about a little something, but I wanted to talk about the book of Genesis as I was continuing on my Bible study series. Happy Sunday, the Lord's Day. Yeah, so if you guys want to talk some Genesis, I'm going to do my Joseph and Jesus comparison, which I always think it's one of the coolest things is how many shadows of Jesus to come is in the man Joseph, the story of Joseph. You're working today? Well, I'm glad you decided to join. Where am I from? I'm from Virginia. I'm on the right coast of the United States. Who wrote Genesis? Actually, that's a good question. I think that most people just assume that Moses wrote it, but I think that Genesis is likely some of it was written by Moses. I think some of it was compiled together to complete the book because what's interesting is there's a passage about right after I think in the story of Jacob and Esau, it mentions specifically that these were the kings that were in Edom before there was a king in Israel. Okay, so just think about like if Moses is writing this, obviously he could be speaking prophetically, but there was never, so he's obviously talking about like almost like there are kings in Israel, and when you think about it, there was no kings in Israel when Moses was around. So that's interesting, right? When is the next episode of Ancient Angels coming out? If I knew, we are still promoting the first two episodes of Ancient Angels, so we kind of need to exhaust that. We need to start filming the next one. Obviously, we have ideas. We just have not got in front of the camera. We've not started editing the next episodes. We're in the research phase. Let's just put it that way. Yep. I've been nice. I would say if you're craving Ancient Angels, the best I can do is I'd say if you're watching Decoding Babylon with Brian and I, you get a lot of the content that we talk about from Ancient Angels in Decoding Babylon, and current stuff too, and obviously different stuff. But I mean, it all falls together. How do we back up the book like Jubilees? Um, well, I guess it's the thing. It's like those kind of books. It's like it's hard to know how much of it's true or not. Um, Obviously, it's not up to me to decide the canon. I think that like books like Jubilees, if it doesn't contradict what the scriptures say, I think there's probably a lot of truth to it. And I think the people who wrote the Bible believed a lot of the books that were in the Apocrypha too. So I guess that's really all you kind of need to know. I think that like with lack of a better alternative explanation, especially in the Bible, like I think it's fine to read the Apocrypha and say this is likely what happened because you can clearly tell that certain books that are not in the canon right now influence the writers of the Bible. That that just seems like it's a very obvious point. Michael Heiser talked about that. Nice. The topic is going to be Genesis. We're gonna go toward the end of Genesis, and we're gonna talk about the story of Joseph, the parallels between Joseph and Jesus himself, the Lord. It's pretty awesome. Enoch, I would say Enoch is. I think everyone should read the book of Enoch. You know, and to the man who said he listens to the Bible, I think it's great to listen to the Bible. But if you're like me, I get way more out of the Bible when I read it. You read it in small doses because I think that sometimes it's really difficult for me to concentrate and stay focused on listening to stuff. A lot of times I listen to audiobooks, and unless they're very simple, I have to turn them off after a while because I'm thinking about something else without even realizing it. So I would say that reading your Bible is better than listening, but I encourage you to, you know, take in the Bible any way you can get it, for sure. Is there any other platform I could share this to other than Instagram? Well, the good and the bad news is this live will only go to the subscriber side, like when I repost it. But the good news is I've got my other camera rolling, and it's going to be uploaded to YouTube later. So I will put this on YouTube later. So you can obviously share to whatever, and it'll find its way onto Rumble and probably Spotify and everything else. If you guys are that interested in listening to it again or listening to part of it. But yes, so anybody got any questions before I get into Joseph and Jesus, the parallels? Um, is there any other religious text you would encourage to read that's historical? Well, I would say this: like I'm not going to go tell you to go read, you know, other texts yet. I mean, because I don't know your background in that. Because I do think that like that can be dangerous if you're not really fully rooted in what the Bible says. Because obviously the other texts would have you could glean truth from them. But I mean, if you don't know what's true in the Bible and you don't know what would be false, it'd be a little dangerous to read alternative text. But I don't know. Like I said, I don't know your level of understanding. So I think sometimes, like, I mean, I've been looking into actually, I downloaded the Book of Mormon. I have not actually, I was going to listen to that one, but I have not actually done that yet because I was interested in what the Mormons talk about, like in the United States. I think they believe that Missouri was where the Garden of Eden was. And so they believe a lot of the stuff that was like over in Egypt, over in the Middle East actually took place here. That's weird. I mean, so I'm kind of curious to what they say about that because, as I've done my hiking excursions with my wife and gone out west to Arizona and then to Nevada, I go out there and I just look at some of the rock structures, specifically like the red rock structures. They look like they were buildings at one point. They look like they were melted. And spoilers, we're going to have an episode of Decoding Babylon with my buddy Alpha Talks, Vitali, and we're going to talk about that. Like the theory that possibly are we living in the short season of Satan, and the Battle of Armageddon's already been fought. And that's why there's all this destruction, or at least evidence of destruction is possible, that Jesus came back, burned this place up, and then we're in the short season of deception. We're certainly in the season of deception right now, regardless. But yeah, is it that much deception? I don't know. We'll find out. Ah, well, interesting. So I'd be curious to what you say. Like, so, well, we won't get in that today. That's too much. That's too much for here today. But we'll talk about Genesis. But yeah, I am interested in that. You have to work on the fact that you need more people if you want your message to arrive to most of us. What do you mean by that? I mean, I'm always trying to work on increasing my exposure, but obviously, I've got a decent sized platform, and even if I was talking to one person, I think that obviously God honors your heart and getting the message out. You know, it is interesting how one seed can be planted in somebody, and that seed can be produced 100 fold because I've been blessed recently that I've talked to people who are interested in what I do, and like I'm helping them like establish platforms and like make videos and stuff like that. And so I think that's the cool thing, is like that you can kind of almost like duplicate yourself. It's like obviously like that's how God's message can really get out there. It's like that if I've got a platform with 80,000 followers on Instagram and other platforms as well, if I can make somebody who does what I do, who's doing what God wants them to do, then obviously I'm excited for the treasure in heaven for doing that. And obviously I think it's just exciting to do that. Do you think Satan has been released from the pit? Well, like I said, that's the question. I mean, like I was talking about this with a friend and I said, okay, so the short season of Satan. So obviously, if you guys don't know, we're talking about like literally Jesus came back, fought the Battle of Armageddon. The saints reigned, either in heaven or somewhere here. And then it mentions that Satan is bound during that time. The Antichrist and the false prophet are cast into the lake of fire before the millennial reign. And then there's like 1,000 years, or some people just believe it's an undetermined long period of time. And then toward the end, Satan is let out of the pit to deceive the nations again and basically gather the armies of Gog and Magog to surround the holy city and be burned with fire. But obviously, it says, and I've always been very like, it's hard to wrap my mind around that. Like, so why did God throws the Antichrist and the false prophet into the lake of fire, but he binds up Satan and puts him down in the bottomless pit? And okay, but then he lets him out again, only to basically then lets him out, burns everybody up with fire, and then casts him in the lake of fire too. Why does he do that? And so what a lot of people have been floating this theory, preterist theory, is perhaps are we in the short season where Satan's been let out? Because I think lots of us who are going down the rabbit hole are finding out, like, man, the lies stacked upon lies, and I think we're starting to question our timeline. We're starting to question everything we've been taught. And so, like, I think at this point, I think you have to consider that that's possible. I'm not saying you have to believe it. And I'm not saying you have to change what you do based on that either. Let's just say we're in that short season. I'm not saying you should do anything different than you think, because it's like, obviously Jesus is going to return again at the end, or like, obviously he returns with the new Jerusalem, the new heaven, new earth. So regardless, we're waiting on Jesus as our hope. But it's obviously a little bit, it makes me a little anxious to think that could be true, because it's like, that's strange, because I do feel like that a lot of the prophecies we're looking toward, if they've already been fulfilled, it's like, I don't know. I guess we just have to walk in faith. But my buddy Vitaly, who's Alpha Talks on YouTube, and he's on here as well, he's done some videos about that, and I think it's interesting. What's going on? Yeah, so I'm kind of excited to talk about that, because I think that observing the environment around you, and then obviously interpreting through like a biblical lens with eyes to see, I think it's exciting. So yeah. So I mean, like I said, I think you have to be able to consider the possibility that could be true, because guys, the devil is very deceptive. The devil is not stupid. Again, like I always say, the devil is not stupid. He's evil. He's evil, not stupid. And he's definitely smarter than us. So like I said, you'd have to be able to consider it, I think, at least the possibility that could be true. You don't have to believe it, and I'm still on the side of, I need more evidence. But it is interesting to think about. It's interesting thought experiment, because hey, that's where we're at. Okay, so we're going to get right into it. So obviously I've kind of jumped around in Genesis. I mean, like I said, obviously I've gone in chronological order, but obviously the book of Genesis is so deep, and when you're reading 4 chapters a day, I'm not going to be able to go too slow into Genesis, because if you're where I am, I started reading Exodus today. So like I've done my 4 chapters a day. Actually, yesterday I only did 2, because I finished Genesis and I wanted to start Exodus straight like on a fresh day. But I've read, through the book of Genesis. And so when I get to the story of Joseph, like the J in JT is Joseph, by the way. I don't go by Joseph. My friends call me Joey or Joe. But obviously, I don't know if there's a connection with Joseph. I love it. I love that Joseph interprets dreams. I like the symbolism in things, and I like to think about what things mean. So obviously, I know Joseph was a better man than I am, but obviously something to look for, like to look up to as an example. But anyways, it's cool. So if you guys have never heard this, and if you guys are reading along in Genesis, have you guys noticed all the parallels between Joseph and Jesus? All right, I'm going to go through my list, and if you guys got extra ones, and I always forget one or two. So if you guys remember one, like, remember to call me out and tell me if there's more. Okay, so I'm going to go right to my list. And so just starting right off, Joseph is the favorite son. Obviously, Jesus is the only begotten son. He's the unique son of God. He is obviously who gets the inheritance at the end. So obviously, Jesus the favorite son, Joseph the favorite son. Okay, so both Jesus and Joseph have the gift of prophecy, right? And both of them were hated by their brothers because both of these things. They were hated because they were the favorite, and they were hated because they were prophetic and they spoke from what God told them to speak. What's very interesting is, so Joseph had dreams, prophetic dreams, and it caused his brothers basically to kill him. It's funny how, like, if you think about it, like, or try to kill him or sell him into slavery, it's funny that if Joseph did not have that prophetic dream from God, that God told him to tell, to basically tell people, would he have gotten sold into slavery? It's like part of the prophecy had to be that the brothers were going to hate him for saying, he had these dreams about them bowing down before him. I find that interesting, that, like, if he wouldn't have told them what was true from God, the story might have turned out different. I mean, that's similar to Jesus, where it's like Jesus spoke with authority from things that God the Father had told him to say, and they hated him for it. And so, obviously, interesting. So they plot to kill him. Obviously, you guys know that the Pharisees plotted to kill Jesus, correct? He's thrown into a pit. So there's two examples of that. So Jesus, obviously, when he dies, he goes down to the pit, he comes out, which is interesting. When they throw him into the pit at first, they go back and look, and he's gone. Remember, like, I think they sold him to slavery, but yeah, like, so the pit was empty. So he was sold for the price of a slave. Jesus too. So Joseph was sold for 20 pieces of silver. Jesus was sold for 30 pieces of silver by Judas. Betrayed him, sold him out. But they were both sold for the price of a slave. Sold out for the price of a slave. By a brother. So Judas, obviously Judas Iscariot, and like Joseph's literal brothers. But yes. So his clothes were proof that he was gone. And so even think about, even like the resurrection, it was like the coat was left. Almost like you think about, like, when they walked into the tomb, his clothes were still there. Interesting. That's another one. But also, what they used to try to sell their father on the fact that Joseph was dead, they tore up his clothes and they put goat's blood on it. So if you guys don't know, when Jesus died on the cross, he became the sin offering. And so in the Day of Atonement, there was like the one goat that they put all the sin on, in like, this is in Leviticus, and they send that goat out to Azazel, demonic figure in the book of Enoch, obviously wicked Satan character. But yes, so Jesus obviously his clothes were divided. Remember, they cast lots and they divided up his garments. Well, like I said, his brothers tore up his garments and they put goat's blood on it in order to say he's been eaten by wild animals. So there you go. There's another one. So when he was sold over to the Gentiles, the Egyptians. And so even think about it. So, like, the Egyptians were kind of like the big people on the block at that time, just like the Romans were. So obviously his brothers sold him to the Gentiles, the ruling authority. So, like, basically the Jews sold Jesus to the Romans. His brothers sold Joseph to the Egyptians, who were basically kind of, like I said, the ruling class at the time. Okay, so then he was thrown into jail for 3 years, and he committed no crime. In the same respect, so Jesus obviously committed no crime. He was crucified on the cross. 3 days later, rose again. So, like, 3 years in prison for Joseph, and then you have Jesus in the ground, basically kind of in the prison of the underworld for 3 days. Okay, so here's another one. So this one is wild. I think this is one of the cooler ones. Is when Joseph is in jail. So obviously he doesn't sleep with Potiphar's wife, and he gets put in jail. But everything he does, he prospers in. So they put him in charge of the jail. Well, so, like, the Pharaoh's cupbearer and his bread maker get put into jail, and they both, like, the first night they're in there, they have these prophetic dreams, and Joseph interprets them. So just think about it. You have the bread and the wine. I will post. Well, this will be posted to the subscriber side, but it will also be posted to YouTube. So do not worry. It will be up there. I will get this up there on YouTube. But yeah, so you have the cupbearer. So think the bread and the wine. Okay, think about the Last Supper. So breaks the bread, and obviously the wine is of the new covenant. So both the bread maker and the wine or the cupbearer's dreams, it's 3 days, and then one gets restored, and then one gets hung on a tree. So think about Jesus's flesh dies, right? Like the bread. The bread is broken for us. This is the symbol of what he did for us. The bread maker gets crucified, basically, or gets hung on a tree, like Jesus was hung on a cross. And then in 3 days, the cupbearer, the wine, was put back into the king's house and was restored, like Jesus' blood. I think that's very cool. I was like that, and so like I always have to even remind myself, we are lucky enough to have this book all written like in order. Just think about the fact that the story of Joseph is like 2,000 years before Jesus. Around, I'm not exactly sure the exact timeline, but like knowing all these things, like the bread maker and the cupbearer dreams, like that is obviously the power of God, the power of prophecy, that could line up like that. I think that's incredible. So obviously Joseph interprets those dreams. And the interesting part of that story is like it's there, even that kind of almost like the thief on the cross moment is, so when the cupbearer gets restored back to Pharaoh's house, Joseph says, "Remember me when you when you get back." Just like the thief on the cross said, "Remember me, Lord." And then Jesus told him, "Truly I say to you, later in this day you'll be in paradise with me." Unfortunately, though, the cupbearer forgot. He forgot for for a couple of years, and Joseph was still stuck in jail. But he did remember when it was time for Pharaoh's dreams, to interpret Pharaoh's dreams. So finally, when he does, he obviously interprets the dreams of the Pharaoh, and he becomes the second most powerful man in the land of Egypt. Kind of just like when Jesus, dies, rises again, and ascends to the Father, he's at the right hand of the Father. So like basically the Pharaoh gives him his signet ring, and he's as powerful as the Pharaoh. Just like Jesus in heaven is at the right hand of the Father, and he's the most powerful man in all the realm, all the heavens and the earth. So I think that's pretty interesting. So I got getting in here. Okay, so Joseph, when he finally got in charge in Egypt, he was 30 years old. Well, Jesus was 30 years old when he started his ministry. How about that? That's interesting. They were both 30 years old. Okay, so then you get into the story of when his brothers finally, the famine's so great, they have to go to Egypt to get their bread. So they have to come back hat in hand, and they see Joseph, their brother, but they don't recognize him. Very similar to when Jesus is resurrected, and then when the apostles see him, the women see him, they don't even recognize their own brother, just like Joseph and Jesus. And then so it's kind of interesting, the story of like how that happens, where like Joseph, all the things he went through, he makes sure he tests them. He makes sure to test them to see if they've been repentant. And after all this time they had been, and it's interesting how Judah is the one who was willing to sacrifice himself for his father's sake, for his brother. And like, so obviously Judah, that's the line Jesus comes out of. So like Judah is willing to humble himself and say, I will go to prison for my brother because if you don't send Benjamin back, it's going to kill my father. And so through this story, and of course, obviously this is one of the best parts of this whole thing, is that like the one part that I always kind of get a little choked up when I think about it is that like, so obviously because of this evil that was done to him, it was like basically kind of what you guys meant for evil, God meant for good. So like I said, if he wouldn't have told those prophetic dreams that caused his brothers to hate him, then they wouldn't have sold him into slavery, and he wouldn't have been in place to be able to save them. Okay, so that is exactly what Jesus did for us. Think about it. If Jesus wouldn't have told these people what God told them, told him to say, which he knew they weren't going to like, they would not have crucified him. And he would not be in a position to save us had he not spoke what God spoke to him. Exactly the same thing. It was like, so what they meant for evil, them crucifying Jesus, Joseph's brothers selling him to slavery, that is what God used for their salvation. I mean, again, if that's not like completely awesome, I don't know what is. And so like the part that gets me choked up a little bit is like how good Joseph was. Because when, so he brings obviously his whole family. Pharaoh takes care of all of them. Joseph is taking care of his family. So Jacob finally dies, right? So when Jacob dies, the brothers are thinking, they're still thinking like he's like them. He's not like them. And so they think, well, Joseph's going to kill us now, probably. Like, what's he going to do? He's obviously going to throw us into jail. He's going to torture us. He's going to give us what we deserve. And that's when Joseph says, he starts to weep. He gets teary-eyed because he's like, no, you don't understand. Like, because obviously Joseph had real faith and he really believed God. He's like, what you did to me, the evil you did to me, God always intended it for your benefit. And so like Joseph, he forgave them. That is what Jesus does for us. It's like that what man meant for evil, what the devil meant for evil, God used, like twisted it on his head and used it for our salvation. And it's like, praise God. I don't know how much, like I said, to me, that story is just so amazing. Of course, there's the 7-year parallels. You could even think about like the tribulation and everything and the famines and 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine. I just think that's awesome. And I'm trying to think if there was another one. Another one is that obviously one of the things Joseph does at the very end is he says, do not leave me in Egypt. When you guys leave, because he believed the promise that God gave to Abraham, gave to Isaac, gave to Jacob, was that they were going to own Canaan one day. So he told them, tell my brothers that you need to take me out of here and bury me in Canaan when you go. And obviously they did. So even Joseph had an empty tomb, right? So there's an empty tomb in Egypt where Joseph was, just like there's an empty tomb in Jerusalem where Jesus was. Empty tomb, empty tomb. So I think that's pretty cool. Did I miss any? Thank you. Did I miss any? Because I probably did. I mean, here's another one that I found the last minute was, okay, so if you guys are familiar with one of Joseph's dreams, the second one, the one they really hated, even his dad didn't like, was that he was surrounded by 11 stars and the 11 stars bowed down to him. And also the sun and the moon bowed down to him. And so I started to think about it. I remember in the book of Isaiah, it talks about the day of the Lord. And here's what it says about the day of the Lord in Isaiah. And this is Isaiah chapter 24, verse 23. And it says, well, actually, I'm going to start with verse 21. On that day, the Lord will punish the hosts of heaven in heaven, the kings on the earth, and they will be gathered together as prisoners in a pit. And they will shut up in prison after many days they have been punished. Then the moon will be confounded, and the sun will be ashamed, for the Lord of hosts reigns on Mount Zion in Jerusalem, and his glory will be before his elders. So even obviously the sun and the moon are going to be bowing down to Jesus too, just like Joseph had a dream about them bowing down to him. So coincidence? Of course not. We don't believe in coincidence like that. That's like literally like the power of God. It's like God is so good. It's like, I think that's incredible. I think to me, it's like I said, there's characters in the Bible, like historical men of God. Joseph is in my top 5. Like he's just so awesome. And I've always wondered like why the line did not come out of Joseph's line. But I almost feel like Joseph is like the Nazarene in the family. He's kind of like the spirit that Jesus had. He had the faith like Jesus had. So it was almost like Jesus was born as a man in the family of on Judah's line, but I feel like the spirit was of like Joseph's line when he's resurrected. That's like the real, like that kind of godly faith that like that's why like Joseph was really the good one. You know, if you think about it, so like Joseph didn't deserve anything that he got in that scenario, other than just obviously getting all the things he got in Egypt. But it's like just think about like this when you go through trials yourself. That Joseph is the only one who could have handled what he handled. There was not one other brother who could have suffered like he did and then did what was right at the end. And so like thinking like that as you for yourself, it's like, well, sometimes like you're going through all these terrible trials and stuff, but like one day God can use that for somebody else's benefit and for your benefit as well. Because obviously it worked out pretty well for Joseph. Joseph lived a long time. He had sons, he had a wife. He seemed like he did pretty good, right? And through all that suffering, he's still, you know, like all that things he was done wrong when he never did wrong. Like God can use you in that same kind of way. So obviously we can all look up to the example of Joseph, and I think that's awesome. I don't know about you guys, but yes, but what I find interesting, so toward the end of the book of Genesis, this is something that I've read Genesis I don't know how many times. I did not notice this until today. Joseph is the strongest amongst his brothers, and that's why he endured all the things. Exactly. That's what I was saying. Like that Joseph was the only one who could have done it. You know, so maybe it is like that. If you're going through some really tough stuff, is it possible that God is putting you through this because he believes you can do it? When you could look at somebody else and why don't they have to deal with these things? Because God knows you and God believes in you, and he reproves the ones he loves in order to accomplish, you know, what he wants. Again, that's what I think that he's a great example of. My favorite life verse is Romans 8:28, where it says that God uses all things together for the good for those who love him and are called to his purpose. So he's specifically that guy. You know what I mean? Like that when you understand like that God uses all these things together for your good. Obviously, we're talking about the bad things, because if it was just the good things, everybody could see why that would be good for us, the blessings, but like all the bad things is what he used for the salvation of Egypt, you know, the Israel, and obviously through Israel, all of us, because obviously it led to the line of Jesus one day. And it's like, again, the promise that Abraham received at the very beginning. So I think that's cool. But yeah, what I was saying is like here's a verse that I did not notice until today. And this is just kind of a cool little tidbit. Of course, like as you read your Bible, like I think what's awesome is that no matter how many times I read my Bible, like I see stuff that I never noticed before, and I'm amazed by that. Okay, so at the end of it's Genesis 48. So as the guy, you know, as one part of the Ancient Angels movie crew, I think this is awesome. Anything that has something to do with giants in the Bible, obviously I find infinitely fascinating to me. And so here's a passage about giants that I never noticed, and it's such a strange thing. So this is when Genesis 48 is when Jacob is blessing Joseph's sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Ephraim, however you say it. I say Ephraim. And so what's interesting, so you go down to verse 21, and it says, you know, so obviously Jacob's alternate name is Israel. And it says, then Israel said to Joseph, behold, I am about to die, but God will be with you and will bring you again to the land of your father. So again, he gets taken back to Canaan. And maybe that's why Joseph specifically told them to take him back. But he says, moreover, I have given to you to your brothers one mountain slope that I took from the hand of the Amorites with my sword and with my bow. So if you guys are not familiar, the Amorites, every time you see the Amorites mentioned, the Amorites were giants. The Amorites were a tribe of giants. So Jacob just said that he took this mountainside from these giants with his sword and his bow. And I'm like, where can I read more about that? Like, like the story of Jacob killing giants with a sword and a bow. Like, I cannot believe I missed that part. That to me is bananas. But I mean, I guess that's very similar to like the story where Abraham himself, I mentioned this, Abram, as he was called then, and in Genesis chapter 14, he goes and fights in this war with these giants. He kills, like, he slaughters a bunch of giants. That's crazy. Because like I said, these things don't get talked about much, but it's like, obviously these guys who were men of God, they were men of war too. It's like these guys were hardcore. Very interesting. A friend feels that is relating to dinosaurs. Well, I've mentioned before that I said I think that the reason we talk about dinosaurs so much, and I think to me it's like more like it's muddying the waters, because like dinosaurs, big animals, like who really cares? I mean, I know it's kind of cool to see old bones of stuff, but like I think that a lot of what the giant or the dinosaur stuff is a cover up for giants. You find some big femur bone and you say, oh well, it had to be some T-Rex or something like that. Well, the Bible and every ancient mythology talks about giants. Native American mythology talks about giants. I just saw another article about Lovelock Caves in Nevada, where Native Americans claim they burned giants in this cave, and there's evidence they did. There's all kinds of evidence around the world of giants, and it's like, but it wasn't until the late 1800s that dinosaurs were discovered. Like as if that man wasn't digging around in the ground since the garden. Like, so how would they have missed big giant dinosaur bones, fossils, and whatever? Yeah. I mean, I guess the point is like that a lot of times the dinosaurs, the skeletons they found or the fossils they found, they're not intact. So like they've had to put things together like Legos, and then they kind of make it act like it's science. But I mean, like really, they've kind of made a lot of stuff up, and then they've kind of like attached it as like they've made their theories pronounced as facts, and that's what science seems to do all the time now, when it literally goes contrary with what people wrote about. Like smart people like the Romans believed in dragons and monsters and giants. Well, they weren't stupid people. Like obviously you're talking about these people who ruled this place for like 1,000 years. Were they stupid? No, they weren't dumb. These people were mathematically smart. They knew about the cosmos. They knew about how the sun, the moon, and stars worked. They were not ignorant of this place they lived in. So if they said they were giants, they were monsters, I believe them. I believe more than what our textbooks say. That's for sure. Yeah, I mean it's so in the book of Genesis it mentions that all flesh was corrupted, and then in the book of Enoch it goes even further detail about like that the angels were like basically tinkering with the DNA of all kinds of things, and I think that's where you can get into like chimera. Is it possible that they literally made like monstrous beasts like a T-Rex? Maybe. But I mean, like the Bible talks about dragons. Obviously, is it theoretic? I mean, is it allegory to say that the devil's a dragon, or or were the seraphim angels literally dragon like? I don't know. If you read in the book of Job, I think it's Job 41. It talks about the Leviathan, and if you read what Leviathan is described as, he's described like straight up Godzilla. He breathes fire and everything. He's got like armor on his body that like basically can't be pierced. It's like he's a monster that lives in the sea. He's like I said, just like Godzilla. I mean, is that literal, or is Leviathan an allegory for Satan and his crew? I think it could work both ways. Yeah, I mean, I think that's what dinosaurs really are, because I don't think that, again, again, why would people just like find out who they are in the 1800s? I think, again, going back to how we started this off talking about like the short season of Satan, there's a lot of funny business in the 1800s happened. A lot of funny business started to happen in the 1800s, where like history started to like just shifted on a dime, where like I said, there's so many like crazy structures that were built in the 1800s dinosaurs were discovered in the 1800s. It's like, obviously then we had like this industrial revolution, and all kinds of things changed from like the 1800s to like to today, that like the technology kind of just changed in a real quick, like electronic way, mechanical way that wasn't like that before. Why? I don't know. Okay, so the Geneva Bible stuff. So I'm sure you've seen a few videos that I have seen. And so I've seen that the Geneva Bible was before King James. And then, yeah, King James changed stuff that was in the Geneva, like basically took verses out that were in the Geneva Bible. I will say that I have not researched that enough to know for sure, but I've been looking into getting one. So I would say that's what I would encourage you to do. And maybe I'm reading my ESV right now, like as my trip through the from Genesis to Revelation. Now it's Exodus to Revelation because I've already finished Genesis. But I think that I'm going to look into getting a Geneva Bible because I think it's worth looking into for sure, for sure. Okay, my question is, who is they, them, we believe in Google? Who's feeding us the truth? Well, they, them would just be like the merchants, the kings of the world, the rulers, the authorities, who are under the princes, the principalities, the powers. I think that when we just say they, I think that's where, like, as a person who believes the Bible, literally, I think that that's why, like, I believe in a conspiracy. Like, not every conspiracy. I'm talking about one big conspiracy where it's literally this Antichrist agenda. So when I speak of them, I speak about the people who are literally trying to bring it about, the Antichrist. Like that's like literally like that spirit that's been in the world for a long time since Nimrod, and is all has always been there. So I think there's like this rebellious spirit, the spirit that built the Tower of Babel, that brought together all these world powers, these like Rome, Babylon, Persia, Greece, like these empires that came together, is that spirit of Antichrist. And so when I say them or they, that's who I'm talking about. Same thing today. They're trying to bring in their new world order, one world government. Obviously, you're going to own nothing and you're going to be happy. No. No, you don't believe. Nobody believes that, do they? Yes. So, I mean, I think that's what I'm talking about. That one world religion. It's spirit of Antichrist. Obviously, it's prophetic biblical stuff. The iron and clay, the iron and clay feet of the Nebuchadnezzar statue. I thought I almost had one more thing I wanted to talk about, and I can't remember if I missed this or not. Maybe it'll come to me. But yeah, so I'm on to Exodus right now, and I've got a video that I hope people are going to like because I think it's an interesting connection. It's going to be about Joseph, and it's going to be about the plagues of Egypt, and I'm excited. I was going to maybe release it soon, or start to record it and maybe put it together. But I think I need to read Exodus again because I need to read about the plagues again before I make this video. Well, I think that the way I believe it works is it's interesting to consider have the people who really, bring about the satanic agenda. How many of them have encounters with real live fallen angels? I think it's possible that some do. I think it's possible that some actually have access to the actual angels, interact with them. But I think most of them interact through the demonic, like literally like witchcraft, channeling of demons. And if you think about it, like the demons can literally speak for their fathers in some kind of way. Even I believe like the worst angels that were chained up in the bottomless pit, like in the pit or under the Euphrates, I believe that they can probably get word to the men, the sons of disobedience, as it mentions in Ephesians, who basically go about and do the devil's work. So I think, but I've always wondered, like, that we are supposed to be the people of faith, right? That believe without seeing. So I believe that the people who rule this place, they're not walking in faith. I think that they've seen things and they've been given things. And that's why when these people say that like they sold their souls and they've done all these things, and it's like, well, they got all the stuff, right? You know, they've got all this. Like, don't they have the stuff to back it up? That when they've asked for things and they've gotten things and they said they've done things, there's really no reason not to believe them. What do I think the mark of the beast is? I do not think it's anything that's happened yet. You know, without saying what you just said, I don't believe it's anything that happened yet. But I do believe that the mark of the beast is likely that could be a precursor to it. I think that it's possible that the mark comes with this component of, I think, a social credit score. Because I think that's what the whole point is. Like the mark, like the people who receive the mark, they end up worshiping the beast too. So I think that, yeah, digital currency, obviously that makes perfect sense, that there would be some kind of a mark that's related to currency. And that's what people don't quite get all the time, is like that the Bible literally says if you don't get it, you can't buy or sell. So in our lifetimes, like I said, again, we're not talking preterism here. So like, let's in the futurist view, that we have not seen anything where if you didn't get this certain thing, you could not buy or sell. It says everybody has to get it in order to buy or sell. So I think that it's a, you know, it's a obviously a real, some kind of thing that it can be identified. You know, is it possible it's a microchip in the hand? As somebody who grew up like in the 90s and watched like some of the Left Behind stuff, like when I still believed in that pre-trib stuff, I think we all have wondered and worried that it could be a microchip. And it's like, that technology is straight there. I mean, obviously you see like in these, even like Whole Foods, you're paying with your hand. There's a girl on TikTok called Chip Girl, and she's got an RFID chip in her hand, and she can like pay with it. She can open her house. She can do it. She doesn't need her car keys. She doesn't need a wallet. She's got all her medical ID and stuff in this stuff. It's like, that is certainly very possibly the technology that could be used. Now, I think that it's possible as well that the mark comes with a genetic component that literally alters our DNA, which obviously I think a lot of people are, you know, they know what was like the medical business is trying to do. I think that the interesting part about it, I think that there's what people will want is the mark is not going to be resisted by most people. I think that's what people need to understand. Like as Christians, we think we'll all be able to see it coming from a mile away. And I believe you're in the word, you probably will. But if you're not, like, I think the world is going to want it. You know, so I think that at the very beginning, like say the mark gets rolled out, it's going to come with like a carrot. You're going to want to get it. I mean, like the people who don't have spiritual eyes, they're going to want to get it because you're going to be given something. And then eventually it's going to be hard for you to not get it because they're going to make things difficult for you. Like you won't be able to buy or sell. And then one day it'll be like, you got to get this or you're going to be killed. So I think, like I said, I think there's going to be like 3 phases of it. The carrot, it's like the silver or the lead. You know, like eventually it's going to get to like the point where you're going to the gallows if you don't get it. Now the real question is what could it be? And I think there's all kinds of number of things it could be. Obviously, the Bible mentions that it's the mark of the beast, and it comes with it's either the beast's name or the number of his name, which is 666. Some translations of the Bible actually say 616. It's going to go on your right hand or your forehead. But at the same time, it's like, I would not get anything on any part of my body that had anything to do with buying or selling. And I mean, at this point, I think that I've made bad medical decisions in the past, getting surgeries I look back and regret. I think that a lot of my belief now is putting my faith in God. And so like, if I had any kind of, I'm not putting anything in my body, like basically at all, you know? I'm not saying I don't take any medicine, but I'm saying like, I'm not ingesting anything. I'm not putting anything that would make me less human in my body. So I think there's the transhumanism element as well. So like, think about the Neuralink. So Elon Musk, I think actually it was Bill Gates, Elon Musk, and also Jeff Bezos. And I think somebody else, they have this technology. It's some kind of a brain chip that interacts with it's some kind of computer interface. So if you get that, like, just think about the idea that you could get this connection that literally comes with your own personal AI. And as Elon Musk has said a lot of things that are true, he says a lot of things that are false, but he says a lot of true things. He said that AI was summoning the demon. So imagine if you connected yourself to some neural link that connects yourself with some kind of AI that literally could be connecting yourself to some demon. You know, there's the interesting verse with that. It says was it for 5 months that the scorpions from the pit, or the locusts from the pit, are going to be able to torment men, and they're going to seek death but not find it. Is it possible that the reason is because this transhumanism element prolongs people's lives, possibly in some kind of a matrix? What if it was like that movie Ready Player One, or like some metaverse? Like the metaverse, you interact with this thing, so no longer we use our phones. We're literally going to be on the web in our brains. Like literally streaming with our eyes closed. I don't know. I mean, I said don't take that bait though. Yeah, like I said, I will. If you guys don't have any other questions, I'm gonna close here in a second. But yeah, I'm gonna post this, and like I said, if you guys subscribe to me on Instagram, I'll post this right back to my page. Obviously, if you don't want to do that, you don't feel led to do that, which I don't think you don't have to. Follow me on YouTube, because I'm going to post this video to YouTube probably tonight. So if you guys want to check it out on YouTube, obviously YouTube's for free. But subscribe to my YouTube channel, and obviously you'll get the glorious HD version of this. It'll be in widescreen. It'll sound a little better, and I hope you guys enjoy that. But yes. So, anyways, that being said, yeah, guys, if you guys have not seen Ancient Angels yet, check it out. We're really excited. It's doing pretty well. Brian and I are going to do a podcast here real soon, talking about the Miami Mall incident. Crazy stuff. Maybe even talk about the tunnels that are under New York City. Insane stuff. We just need to get on the same schedule. We got a couple good podcasts coming up though. We're gonna talk to, do you guys know Paul from Understanding Conspiracy? I just linked up with him, and I'm gonna do a podcast with him on Decoding Babylon about the Nephilim being clowns, the clown Nephilim connection. Did you guys know that was a thing? That's a thing. We're gonna talk about that. I think it might actually be streamed next Saturday. But yes, so we got a lot of stuff on the burner. But if you guys got any more questions, and obviously if you guys have any biblical questions about Genesis and anything obviously that has to do with Jesus, feel free to DM me. But I appreciate you guys. I love all you guys dearly. I hope you have a blessed Sunday and you have a blessed week. Love y'all.